James Holloway had always wanted a quiet place to call his own. After years of working in the city, he longed for the solitude of a house away from the noise, away from the endless movement of people who never seemed to stop. So when he found the old house on the outskirts of town, nestled behind an overgrown lawn and partially hidden by a canopy of towering trees, it felt like fate. The house was old but well preserved, a relic of some bygone era, with its ivy-covered brick exterior and large single-paned windows that reflected the dull gray sky. The realtor had been more than eager to sell it to him, perhaps too eager. The price was a steal for a house of this size, and James didn't question it. He signed the papers without hesitation, packed his belongings, and moved in within the week. The first few days were uneventful. James spent his time settling in, unpacking boxes, and getting accustomed to the quiet. There was something deeply comforting about the creaking of the wooden floorboards beneath his feet, the distant hoot of an owl at night, and the gentle rustling of leaves against the windows. But then he noticed something strange. It was during his third day in the house, while he was exploring the upstairs hallway. He had counted the rooms when he first arrived: 3 bedrooms, a study, a bathroom, and a storage room at the end of the hall. Yet, as he ran his hand along the wallpaper, tracing the edges of the wooden molding, he realized something was off. The layout didn't make sense. From the outside, the house appeared to have a perfectly symmetrical design, but inside, there was a space that didn't align with the exterior walls. He knocked against it, hollow, as if there was a room beyond, hidden behind the wall. There was no door, no handle, no indication that the space was meant to be accessed at all. Curiosity nagged at him, but he pushed it aside. It was an old house after all. Maybe it had been sealed off at some point, a decision made by a previous owner for reasons lost to time. He had no reason to dwell on it, but the thought lingered. At night, he dreamt of the hidden room. In his sleep, he saw himself standing before it, pressing his hands against the wall, feeling something move on the other side. Something waiting. Days passed, and he tried to ignore it, until one evening, something changed. At first, James convinced himself that it was just his imagination. The house was old, full of creaks and groans, and his mind was playing tricks on him. He had spent too much time fixated on the thought of the hidden room. That was all. But then, the objects began to appear. It started with something small, a single rusted key lying in the middle of his living room floor. James found it one morning, just as the pale dawn light spilled through the windows. It wasn't his. He had gone through every drawer in the house while unpacking, every box, and there had been nothing like it. It was old, its surface rough with corrosion, its shape unfamiliar. He turned it over in his hand, trying to imagine where it could have come from. Maybe it had fallen from somewhere. Maybe it had been hidden in the house all along, dislodged by a shift in the floorboards. He placed it on the kitchen counter and tried to forget about it. The next day, something else appeared. A child's wooden toy, chipped and worn, its once bright paint dulled with age. It sat at the foot of the staircase as if someone had left it there deliberately. James stared at it for a long time, unease creeping into his chest. He had no children. There had been no toys in the house when he moved in. And yet, here it was. He picked it up, the wood strangely cold in his hands, and set it aside. He told himself it had to be an oversight. Maybe something had been left behind by the previous owners, forgotten in some corner of the house. Only now making its way into the open. But then there were more. A porcelain teacup cracked down the middle, a faded, moth-eaten ribbon, a small antique mirror with a spider web of fractures distorting its reflection. Each day something new appeared, always in a place where he would find it easily. James started locking his doors at night, checking every window before he went to bed. He told himself that someone must be breaking in, playing some kind of elaborate joke on him. But there was never any sign of forced entry, never a single footprint that wasn't his own. He searched the house from top to bottom, his hands running along every wall, his ears straining for the sound of movement. When he reached the end of the upstairs hallway, he stopped in front of the wall where the hidden room should have been. He pressed his palm against it. It was solid, but as he turned to walk away, he swore he heard something shift behind it. A soft, scraping sound, like something moving. That night, James could not sleep. The house was too quiet, too still, and in the silence, his mind filled in the gaps. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against him. The objects had stopped appearing, but that only made things worse. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something. Then, just past midnight, he heard it. A knock. It was faint, muffled, but unmistakable. A slow, deliberate rapping sound coming from inside the wall. James sat up, his breath catching in his throat. The knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. It was coming from the hidden room. Something was in there. The air in the bedroom felt thick, heavy, with something unseen. James swung his legs over the side of the bed, feet touching the cold wooden floor. His pulse pounded in his ears, his body urging him to stay put, to ignore it, to pretend he hadn't heard a thing. But he couldn't. He moved slowly, forcing himself toward the hallway, his steps light, careful. The knocking continued in a steady rhythm. 3 sharp raps, a pause, then 3 more. The wall at the end of the hall loomed before him, the wallpaper warped and peeling at the edges. James reached out, pressing his hand against it. The knocking stopped. A long silence stretched between him and whatever was on the other side. Then, the wall moved. It shuddered, the wood beneath his palm shifting ever so slightly, as if something was pressing back. A breath hitched in James's throat. Then, slowly, impossibly, a crack formed down the center. The wall was splitting open. Dust rained down as the gap widened, revealing darkness beyond. The air that rushed out was stale, carrying with it the scent of decay and something else. Something old, something wrong. James stepped back, heart hammering, but he could not look away. A figure emerged. At first, it was just a shape, an outline that didn't seem quite right, its movements jerky, unnatural. Then, as it stepped into the dim light of the hallway, James saw it clearly. It was him, or rather something that looked like him. A perfect, awful copy. Its face his own, but stretched in an unnatural grin. Its eyes too wide, too dark. Its clothes were tattered, its skin gray with dust, as if it had been trapped inside that room for years. James couldn't move. The figure raised one finger to its lips. Shh. The hallway lights flickered. Then everything went black.